Hello and welcome to another Sunday live stream. Got something a little different in store today, hopefully. I got a viewer request to take a look at something, and so we're going to try to make this all work. First, I want to give a little bit of background on what this is. And this was a process to get the information to even get started on researching this. So, this is an OVA file. It's a MikroTik or MikroTik, however you want to pronounce it, RouterOS virtual appliance. And the person in question wants to run it in Proxmox or whatever other virtualization they might want to use at a later date. If you're using a VMware product, you should be able to import the OVA file. Add your second network card, because by default, this OVA file only has one network card enabled. So there's a hurdle that has to be overcome. Alright. The next thing is making sure that you set up all the RouterOS parts properly. I am going to make this very clear right now. I am not a RouterOS expert. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with MikroTik. I bought one of their units years ago. I played with it for a while, and it sat on a shelf collecting dust ever since. That has been close to 10 years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago. So this was kind of an exercise in futility, trying to relearn some of this stuff about MikroTik, trying to work through the problems presented by this particular virtual appliance. Now, this person in question has a particular reason for using this old version of the MikroTik RouterOS software, and that's a licensing issue that, it's on them. So, this is a 7-year-old version of the MikroTik RouterOS software. But I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at it. If this doesn't work, I'm going to look at a newer version, because the images are small, we can download it, we can go through the process fairly quick. So hopefully in the process of this live stream, people will learn a thing or two, and I will be addressing questions posed by this viewer. So before we go any further, I want to throw up the error message they were receiving. This is obviously, or should be obvious, that it's in VirtualBox, or excuse me, it's in Proxmox VE, and the hint to solving this is right in the error message on the screen. Could not find disk. Please attach it somewhere else. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to talk this through, but keep in mind this error message that you see on your screen. Alright, so I'm going to take the error message down. In fact, I'm going to put the error message in the comments. Error message reads, error, could not find disk. Please attach it somewhere else. Okay, So I'm going to take this off the screen since the error message is in the chat. I'll bring up the terminal full screen. So what you see here are the files. I have already extracted the files from the OVA. And so we are going to move over to the Proxmox machine. And so I have got the VMDKs copied over, and I have created or converted them to QCOW2. Okay, so the next step we have to do is we need to go to Proxmox VE. We are going to create a VM, and we're going to call it MikroTik, and we're going to call it 610 because that is the version number of the OS, and we'll even have the VM ID as 610. OS, do not use any media. System, defaults are fine. Hard disk, we're going to set this to 1 gig because we're going to take it off afterwards. CPU, 2 cores, memory, 2 gigs. Network, keep in mind you are only seeing 1 network card here. Confirm. Finish. Okay, so we've got our VM number 610. It's MikroTik RouterOS 6.10. Now, notice here under hardware, we only have 1 network card. Also keep in mind that by default, when you import a virtual hard drive image into a VM, it's going to default to attaching as SCSI. So we'll get back to that in a moment. So let's jump back to the terminal. We are going to say QM import disk 610. MikroTik 610 disk 1. QCOW2. My VMs. And then we'll repeat the process with the second disk. Okay, so number 1 is done. Number 2. And all we have to do is change that to 2. Everything else is the same. And let it rip. Okay, so back in the web interface for Proxmox, you've got unused disk 1, 0, and 1 down here at the bottom. That's great. So we're going to double click on the first disk, which is disk 0. Notice it says SCSI by default. We're going to add it this way because we want to reproduce that error message before we go further. Okay, so still this isn't going to boot. So let's go to Options, Boot Order. So SCSI 0 is the disk that we should have removed, but we didn't. So jump back to hardware. Disk 0, detach, yes. Unused disk, remove, yes. Alright, so now all we have is our 2 imported disks. Come back to Options, Boot Order, and you see it defaults to CD-ROM on the IDE, and then it has the network boot. We're going to disable both of those. We are going to move SCSI 1 and SCSI 2 to the top, and we will enable SCSI 1 as the boot disk. Go to Console and start it. And this should fail in just a moment. Or maybe they'll just sit here and look at me. Regardless, it's not doing much. Oh, there we go. Error, could not find disk, please attach it somewhere else. And so if you compare that to the error message I pasted in the chat, this is the exact same error message. Let's go ahead and stop the VM. Jump back to hardware. We're going to detach the 2 hard disks. We're going to add them back. We're going to add them as IDE. Again, we've got to go to Options and Boot Order. And enable the IDE 0. And then we can go back to Console. Start. And this should boot. Okay, but there's another issue. I did mention this earlier. And we can see it here if we do interface print. It shows Ethernet 2. Okay. So we need to make sure that we add another network interface. We'll shut down the VM. Go to the hardware tab. Add network devices. By default, Proxmox VE only has one bridge interface. So if you have not done so already, you need to go to PVE or whatever you've named your given as a host name, network, under interfaces, you need to make sure VM Bridge 1 is created. So you do that by saying create Linux Bridge. In the default configuration, this would be Bridge 1 if you haven't added one already. Leave the other information blank and click create. So we've got Bridge 1. Again, this information is blank. So if we go back to our MikroTik hardware, add network device, bridge 1, add. Returning to console. Start the VM. Good morning, David. Welcome. So, since you're just getting here, this is a MikroTik VM. It was sent to me as an OVA file from a viewer. They were having issues getting it to run in Proxmox. The issue, and you can see earlier in chat, I pasted in the error message. The issue was twofold. First, when you import disks into Proxmox, by default, SCSI is selected. And in this case, it doesn't work. It fails. So that was the first issue to resolve, is to make sure that they are changed to, the two disks are changed to IDE. Have to change the boot order. And then you have to also make sure that there's a second bridge interface connected to the VM, so that it's actually usable as a router, as most people would know it. So now we can log in. We've got our basic MikroTik. And what do we need to do? Interfaces, print, and we've got two interfaces. So in this case, Ethernet 2 or Ether 2 is going to be our WAN interface, and Ether 3 is going to be the LAN interface. Oh no. Well, good luck on a replacement refrigerator. Hopefully it didn't die in the middle of the night, and it still has some coolness left to it, and you don't lose all your food. Good luck, and hopefully you'll be back before things are done. Okay, so let me bring my notes back up. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup on this VM. First thing we're going to do is we're going to say system identity set name equals RouterOS 610, which is great. We only have one user, which is the administrator with no password. If we wanted to put a password on this, type password and hit enter and then follow the prompts. Okay. So we are going to name our interfaces just to make things a little easier. Interface set 0 name LAN. Interface set 1 name LAN. And so that makes things a little easier just to keep it straight for people. Again, I am not a RouterOS expert. This is what I took down as notes after watching some videos and reading some documentation. If this does not fit, what I'm doing today does not fit your particular use case, consult the documentation, figure out what you need to be doing. You probably are going to need to add firewall rules because I am not doing those at this point, so it's using whatever is the default in this case. So, alright. Right now, we are going to say IP address print, and we have no addresses assigned to our interfaces, which is fine. IP address add address 192.168.10.1 backslash netmask interface LAN. And if we look at our IP addresses so far, we've got an IP address on our LAN interface. Okay, so to set up the IP address on the WAN side, IP address add address equals actually I don't want to do it that way either. I want to use DHCP on the WAN interface, and that's down here further in my notes. IP DHCP client add stable equals no interface equals WAN. And print our IP addresses. Now, we have the WAN interface, and as you can see, it's showing D is dynamic. It's got an IP address pulled from the DHCP server on my main network, which would be the WAN for this particular case. And we've got an IP address on the LAN interface. So, next thing we want to do. Let's say IP DHCP server print. And so we can add a DHCP server to our LAN interface. And there's a nice little wizard built in for that. IP DHCP server setup. DHCP server interface LAN. Address space, that's fine. Gateway for DHCP network 192.168.10.1. Addresses to give out 2 to 254 is fine. DNS server, you can specify more than one by adding a comma. Always good to have a secondary. Lease time 3 days. So now if we say IP DHCP server print, we have a DHCP server on the LAN interface. So, good morning, Catherine. Welcome. Thank you for the like. Hopefully your eyes don't gloss over. I'm doing some router setup in a VM for a viewer request for help. And hopefully this gets them moving towards the result they need. Alright, so with all this done, and we're only 28 and a half minutes in, let's see. I'm going to boot up my Ubuntu test container here. I want to look at the network. And that's on VM Bridge 1. Turn off this firewall. And let's start this up and see if we get an IP address with it. I was having issues with this earlier. Could be because I'm using a container instead of a full-on VM. But we do, in fact, have an IP address. We can ping the RouterOS VM. We cannot, however, ping the router on my main network, which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. So, if we let's take a look at I haven't done command line network setup in a while. I'm having a brain fart. Let's see. So basically what the issue is. Let me come back here. So I can bring up my notes again. Let's see. So let's look at that's not going to work. DNS print. Okay. Dynamic servers, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Okay, so basically, we can get to the internal network interface, or the internal network. So the Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu VM, can get an address over DHCP, which is fine, and that gets it on the internal network connected to the MikroTik or MikroTik. It cannot, however, get past the MikroTik. So that would be further configuration on the MikroTik that I am not aware of how to do yet. But this is much further than the viewer who requested help was able to get. And this is a good start. So I invested about 4 hours of my time, 4.5 hours of my time, going through the process of getting this set up and documented so that I would be able to do this today. And that was about all of the extra time I could spare this week on this particular project. So, again, you know, I hope this gets the viewer in question moving on the right track. This is usable, it's functional to a point, but they're going to have some more homework to do on getting it the rest of the way there to fit their exact use case. That I'm afraid that's going to be on them. So I don't use MikroTik on a regular basis. I would honestly use IPFire or PFSense or OPNsense before I'd use MikroTik, especially in a VM. So, with that in mind, let's shut this down. And see what am I displaying right now? Okay, so we are going to go to OPNsense, since we might as well make this about routers today. So MikroTik is a router company. They make a product called RouterOS. They also have a line of devices that they load RouterOS on. So before I go too much further. The nice thing about their devices, and this is MikroTik is a company from somewhere in Eastern-ish Europe. What does it about say? They are in Latvia. So they have a number of hardware devices, and the nice thing about these devices is that they are fairly inexpensive for what you're getting. So that's a major bonus for a lot of people getting started. The downside is they are not the most user-friendly, but it's a trade-off. You get a lot of features for not a lot of money, and there's a learning curve. So the other part of MikroTik, and this is where the viewer's question came in, they make RouterOS available, and they make it not only for their devices, but they've got an x86 option, and you can download a CD image, so you can install it like you would a normal operating system. Or if you come down here under the cloud-hosted router, which is what they're calling it these days, they weren't 7 years ago when this particular version that we were looking at today was made. You can download it in a number of formats for virtualization. VHDX, VMDK, VDI, Virtual PC Image, although Virtual PC has been dead for a number of years, and OVA. So the version that I was sent from the viewer was version 6.10. 6.48 is the latest stable version, and 7.1 is up to the 6th beta. Good morning, Jacob. So MikroTik specializes in routers, or that was what they specialized in for a long time. They've expanded to switches, which they have their own Switch OS, which is sort of a scaled down, simplified version of RouterOS. They also have access points and other things for different uses. So, I guess that was the long answer to your short question, Catherine. So, like I said, I don't use MikroTik on a regular basis, so I fumbled through the viewer question. I found enough information to get things functional to a level that they can build upon by rewatching this video. And from there, I'm afraid they're going to be on their own because I'm not the knowledge base for MikroTik. With that all in mind, let's take a look at... Might as well take a look at OPNsense, because I haven't looked at it in a while. And, well, actually, okay, let's just do it this way. I haven't taken a look at it in a while, and I know they've had some updates. So we'll get this downloaded, we'll upload it to the Proxmox server, and we'll go through an install just to see where we're at. So, and to eat up another hour and 20 minutes. So, Jacob, have you by any chance used MikroTik at all before? Just out of curiosity. Well, that's not good. Okay, so downloads. Now, something's not working quite right here. Let's see. No, but it's on my to get list. Okay. So I, like I mentioned earlier, may have been before you joined in, Jacob. I have a router board router that I bought probably 10 years ago. Used it for a little while, got frustrated with it, and on the shelf it went. And this is really the first time I've played with RouterOS in 10 years, probably. So, I can figure out why. This is not letting me... let's see if we can do it this way. Oh, look at that. And they zip their ISOs. Okay, that's why. Currently, my network consists of a PFSense on a Dell R710, 8 HPE 48 port gigabit switches, and 2 10 gig Avaya Nortel switches. Nice. I'm still on 1 gig, so for my internal network, I have contemplated getting a 10 gig switch. So maybe later this year, that'll work. But I was wondering yesterday if I was going to be able to do this live stream because I went to do an update on my Mac Mini, which is where I do all my live streams from, and after installing an update, it didn't want to restart. So, needless to say, I went to the credit union and I got my physical credit card reissued because I know they sent me one during the pandemic and I stuck it somewhere for safekeeping. So I reported that as lost because I could not put my fingers on it. I had a new one issued. Thankfully, my credit union does them right on the spot, so I'm happy about that. And so if I have to replace my Mac Mini, I'm going to get the new Mac Mini model that has 10 gig Ethernet built in, just to future-proof myself. And knowing that, at $1,200, I could not build a better PC for video editing because a graphics card that would be better than what's in the new Mac Mini would cost almost as much as the Mac Mini itself, without a case, motherboard, memory, storage, power supply, and the CPU. So, yeah. Oh, bugger. That's not what I wanted at all. Okay, let's try this again. We want the ISO download. Thank you very much. I have an 80 port Brocade 8 gig fiber channel SAN also. Dang. Rip my power bill for life. Yep. That's going to be a big one on power consumption. Closest thing I've come to macOS in 10 years is Big Sur on my ESXi cluster. Nice. So I've got Big Sur on 2 laptops right now, 2 MacBook Pros. One that I bought, one that was given to me as a hand-me-down because the battery is shot. But those are both falling off the supported list when Monterey, macOS Monterey comes out in the fall. The thing I like is for the new M1 Max is that the power consumption is so low. So like under full load for video editing, for rendering, you're talking maybe 25 watts. And idle, it's at like 5. So that would be a huge improvement. I don't think Apple is a bad product, just overpriced, and I don't like the closed ecosystem. Yeah, I get it. It's not my favorite thing about Apple, for sure. Let's try this again. Okay. This is just being stubborn today. ISO BZ2. Let's extract that. And then maybe we can make this work. So, full disclosure, this is going to be my first time taking a look at OPNsense in quite some time, probably 2 years anyways. Undefined error. Okay. bzip2-d. Okay. So let's come back over here. And bzip2-d. And maybe that'll work. So I did actually, I don't know if I read it or if I watched it in a YouTube video. When you get to comparing the number of ports, this was more on laptops. Once you get to comparing the number of ports available and the speed of those ports, and comparable speed, the Apple MacBooks, they compared, I think it was a MacBook Pro to a Dell XPS, and the MacBook was only $100 more. So well, I got it downloaded, Catherine. I just it's having issues extracting, so I'm trying it from the command line here and see if that works. But it doesn't give you a progress bar by default. But let's see what this is doing. So one of these ZSH processes should be bzip2 extracting the bzip file. Let's see. And maybe that's done. Okay, so now we should be able to come back over here. Hey, look at that. Upload that to the server. So it's just the seems that the default archive utility in macOS does not handle BZ2 files, bzip2 files. So no harm, no foul. We just find another way. There's always a plan B. Always a plan B. So once this gets uploaded, we will create a new VM for OPNsense and play around a little bit. I know a lot of people have talked about how the interface in OPNsense is cleaner and more modern looking than that of pfSense. You know, it's I guess in large part a matter of preference, a matter of what your use case is, and you just take it from there. My feeling is it's never bad to know more than one product in the same sort of category, and you know, just go from there. So, anybody working on any interesting projects right now while we're waiting for this to finish uploading? My Proxmox cluster that I built last Sunday during the live stream, I had to kill it. I had to kill it. Turns out it's not so forgiving for devices that only have a single storage device in them. And so that basically rendered the 2 nodes that I added to the cluster more or less useless, because they had no place to store VMs. So live and learn. There are times that I will admit I should read the documentation better than I do, but at the same time, I question whether I would learn as much if I didn't go into the documentation having some expectation of finding answers. Let's see, Catherine. OPNsense is not Linux. OPNsense is based on FreeBSD. So, alright, we've got our OPNsense. We should have our OPNsense uploaded. There we go, OPNsense right there on top. Okay, so we're going to create a new VM. OPNsense. We are going to select our ISO image. System defaults are fine. Hard disk. I'll make this 60. Probably way overkill. 2 processor cores. 2 gigs of RAM. And like we saw when we were looking at RouterOS, and basically all instances that I've seen on Proxmox, you start with a single bridge network interface. Finish. And once that's created, we'll make some modifications. So again, under hardware, we're going to add a network device. This is going to be bridge 1. Add. And we're going to take a look at options real quick. So boot order is going to be the SCSI disk first, then the optical, and we're going to turn off network boot because we don't need that. And we'll go ahead and power this on. And this will take a moment, and then we will get to the installer and get things moving. No uplink detected. Okay, so this should be VT net 0 for the WAN. And we'll try VT net 1. Okay. A little luck. That should be what they want. We'll find out if it actually has an IP address on the WAN interface. So the you're not going to be able to import the BZ2 file directly into VirtualBox. The BZ2 is like it's another version of zip. It's got a different compression, different type of compression than zip, and it's mostly used on Linux and Unix type operating systems. So the WAN interface should be 74.194. And that's probably not going to let me in because I am on the public side of that. Which is sort of to be expected. So, see what we've got here. All of these are command line only. Go figure. So let's, just for the sake of argument, I don't think we're going to have enough set up yet. Yeah, that's not on there yet. Let's try rebooting that, see if that gets DHCP from the OPNsense. And now it's on 1.100. And it can ping 1.1. Okay, so we don't have the DNS set up, which is preventing us from getting out to Google. Okay, so what we need is a VM to let us into the graphical web interface of OPNsense. So I need to check and see if I've got any ISOs on this computer because my external hard drive is acting flaky since my little incident yesterday. Downloads. Give me... Oh, let's see. Doesn't look like we've got anything small there. Let's see, Lubuntu. We'll grab Lubuntu. That's going to be fairly small. Desktop, save. Actually, copy link. Let's go and do it this way. Download it direct to Proxmox. So no, you don't need to convert it. You need to extract it. It's like a zip file. So something like 7-zip. Should do the trick. I believe that supports yes, bzip2 files. So if you've got 7-zip on your computer, that would do it. If you're running Linux, the built-in archive tool should be able to extract it just by right-clicking on it and saying extract. So that's what you need to do in order to get it into VirtualBox. So let's see where we're at on this. 45%. So yeah, I figured that was going to happen. Let's see, a bunch of stuff that I was using to get ready for this today. Okay, let's wait this out for a minute. Check one thing here. And hopefully David has some luck finding a new refrigerator. Hopefully he doesn't have to sell off a computer to pay for a refrigerator, but I don't think he'll have to. So %, and that should be okay. So got Lubuntu. So let's build a virtual machine. And for network, we're going to set this to bridge 1. Start this after creation. So if this works correctly, once we get this installed, we should be able to view the interface for OPNsense, do the configuration, and eventually have internet access. That's what I hear, Catherine. I don't have a wife to make happy, so I cannot say from first-hand experience. Okay. Power management we don't need to worry about. So actually, since we're booting it into a live environment currently, we could actually just open up Firefox. And should be able to get to OPNsense right from here. So I believe, if I remember correctly, the username is admin and the password is not OPNsense. Okay, let me find out. OPNsense default password is default username is root. Password is OPNsense. Okay, starting initial configuration. General setup. Hostname OPNsense, primary DNS. And I think that's good. Time zone. Let's see. Detroit. IPv4 configuration type DHCP. That's fine. I think we can. Change this later. LAN address, root password, and reload. Now with that, you can ping the router. You can ping the router on my main network. And we can ping google.com. So Much less work to get a basic OPNsense configuration up and going and functional than it is with RouterOS from MikroTik. Yes, I saw earlier in the week, maybe end of last week, Microsoft has made their own Linux distribution called CBL-Mariner. You're correct. My understanding is that it's not your typical Linux distribution. It's not a desktop-oriented Linux distribution. But it is kind of interesting. So it's RPM based, so it's based on in some part CentOS or Fedora. Used in Microsoft Azure, so for their cloud stuff. I mean, the installer doesn't look bad. I have not seen or watched yet a video showing it in action. I'm not entirely sure what it's capable of. That's something that I will be looking at in the future, at least to cover on the channel. I doubt at this point, or for the near future, that I'm going to buy into using a Microsoft version of Linux. Especially not at a 1.0 version. So it should be interesting to see how it plays out. This article says it's in some ways related to Photon OS project and to Fedora. And it leverages what they call spec files, which I'm not entirely familiar with. I've heard of them, but I've never researched them in depth. So once I can get my hands on a copy of this, I will do some investigative work and see what I can come up with. But yeah. So that's cute. They call their main area the lobby in OPNsense. So yeah. OPNsense seems to have a pretty clean layout. Like I said, we got the very basics up and running, you know, in like 5 minutes worth of time doing the install and the basic configuration, and then testing it with a Linux distribution to make sure that we're getting access to the internet. So there are a number of things that you could modify from here. Of course, you're going to want to spend some time building Firewall rules. You may want to set up firewall categories. And then do your rules for the LAN and WAN interfaces, because it's likely that you're going to want something stricter than the basic stuff they've got in here by default. Now, they do have, if I am remembering correctly, they've got a captive portal, so if you're doing Wi-Fi, you can make people agree to terms of service before they get access to your network. Useful on a guest network. You can set up your DHCP, you can set up DNS mask, intrusion detection can be set up, open DNS, unbound DNS, so if you want to have a DNS server running on this, you can do that as well. And I believe somewhere along the line there were some plugins that you could download for this to add, what is that called? WireGuard VPN. So you know, this is something that I'm going to have to dive into deeper than what we can cover here today. But yes, this should be interesting. The Microsoft Linux distribution should prove to be interesting. And it'll be really telling to see how far they develop it if they do start adding a version with a graphical desktop. I honestly don't see them doing that because that could potentially cut into Windows market share. But who knows what they'll do, 5 years from now. They may decide that it's worth testing something with a graphical desktop, and if they really do go down that road, you may finally see a Linux version of Microsoft Office. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that it's coming in any way, shape, or form. I'm just hypothesizing that if Microsoft were to release a graphical version of Linux, that they would have an opening to then port Microsoft Office over. So, in all honesty, I think if Microsoft had any interest in doing something like that, they would just work with a third-party company and take something like Office 2003, which, yes, there are some people out there still using that, I think Office 2003 was a version. But if they worked with a third-party company and made it run really well in Wine, and then made it sort of an unofficial version where they released a license key that could only be used on Linux, that would be kind of an interesting experiment. Again, I don't really see them doing that. they've had their heels dug in for so long. I doubt they're going to change that now. But I guess that's neither here nor there. Ooh. Sorry, I had to stand up for a minute. So yeah, I will definitely be taking a look at that as soon as I can get my hands on a copy that I can get installed in either VirtualBox or Proxmox, and just see what the buzz is about and whether it's worth spending any amount of time on. Okay. So we know that's working and we've got internet access. Let's go ahead and log out. And we might as well run through the install for Lubuntu while we're here. Everything is good. Erase disk. Next. Okay. Summary. Install now. And then we wait. So Lubuntu is one of those Linux distributions that I find sort of interesting because it's got a low resource requirement. Oops. So Lubuntu if we come down somewhere along here, so we got the 21.04 version. I think we want documentation. So and that is not really searchable there. So maybe they've got we've got some information. Okay, so we'll just do it this way. Haha. Alright. Base system requirements. Half a gig of RAM, 1 gig recommended. Pentium 4, Pentium M, AMD K8, or newer CPU. Look at their Wikipedia page. Newest version is 21.04. And so we've got versions here. 21.04 is Hirsute Hippo, current non-LTS. 2110 is future non-LTS. And so next April we should have another long-term support version. So like I said, very lightweight, low resources. I would consider putting this on something like a Core 2 Duo with 4 gigs of RAM, and giving it to somebody's kid, somebody's parent or grandparent that's retired, and so long as they've got some way to gain internet access, then they are good to go. And I'm just curious, do we have an ISO download for this? I don't believe there is right now. CBL-Mariner has been engineered with the notion of a small, common core set of packages that can address the universal needs of first-party cloud and edge services while allowing individual teams to layer additional packages on top of the common core to produce images for their workloads. So at this point, I've not seen an ISO image. So let's see. How to download and install CBL-Mariner on a virtual machine. Okay, first thing to do is download from the CBL-Mariner repository and then generate ourselves the ISO image. There's not yet an image to download directly. To do this, you need a series of installed packages, many of them sure you already have, but just in case, blah blah blah. So let's see, what machine do I have? Copy that. Let's go over to well, I guess we could do that right on the Proxmox. Python minimal. I don't want to do that on here. I don't want to break it. Okay, so let's take a step back. Let's see where we're at. We go to our Ubuntu test container here. We could do this. Python 2 minimal. And errors. Well, right. Okay, so we've got an issue there. Okay, so I guess we're going to wait until Lubuntu is done installing, and then we could take a stab at this. We'll take a stab at this. So let me shut this down. And we'll come back to Lubuntu. And I wonder, yeah, that's 72%. Welcome back, Jacob. We are installing Lubuntu on Proxmox, and depending on how much longer that takes, we may be trying to generate the CBL-Mariner, aka Microsoft Linux, image. So we'll see how this goes. See how this goes. We're at 72%. Oh, jumped to 81. Look at that. So, yeah, this might be interesting. Trying to watch my phone a little bit. I've got a package that's going to be delivered today. Thank you, Bezos and Company. Okay, so it's out for delivery anytime between now and 2 o'clock local time. It could show up. So, I got a cheap USB AC 1200 wireless adapter. And by cheap, I mean this thing was under $9. And it claims to work with Windows and Linux out of the box. Mac OS versions older than Catalina should support it. Big Sur is going to be a no-go without some extra work, at least. But yeah, they made some pretty big changes in Big Sur. I would imagine in another couple of years we'll be able to start seeing some of the hardware support come back for Wi-Fi adapters. But right at the moment, especially during this transition period to the ARM-based Macs, I think it's not the worst idea in the world for them to scale back support for some of the hardware and then bring that back after they've finished the biggest part of their transition. So let's see what we've got to work with. Not the flashiest splash screen, but hey, it's all good. For something that will run in such low resources, I won't complain. Let's see what we've got. And address that later. Okay. Okay, hold that thought for just a moment. Let me take that out of full screen. So I'll bring this over to my other browser. Come back here. Full screen that again. Let's go ahead and apply that for the moment. You know what? Cancel that. Okay. So sudo apt install git make tar wget curl rpm golang go. And Python Python 2 minimal. Okay. So we'll see how this goes. You're seeing it live here for the first time. Get a little bit larger, hopefully more readable. And so yes, Jacob, CBL-Mariner is what the Microsoft Linux is called. This is more for use in virtualization, edge devices, meant to not have a graphical interface at this point in time. Should be interesting to see. I may run this live stream just a little bit long, just to see if we can't get through the instructions. So this is the article I am working from, in case you desire to take a look at it on your own. And they have a little issue with the formatting, where for the commands, instead of just showing commands, they've got some HTML mixed in there as well. So ignore anything that starts with a left angle bracket and has BR afterwards. You can ignore that safely, and we will see what we've got to work with after we get through this. Since this is happening live and I can't speed this up, I might have to just chop this video up and use it the video part as a source for another video and just do a voiceover on it, and just talking about this install process. So we will see what happens there. But now that we started down this road, I hopefully will be able to wrap this up. I am hoping by 2:15 Eastern, but we'll see where we're at. See where we're at. So that part's at 99%. What is our next step? We're going to clone the GitHub repository. It's still funny to me that Microsoft is using GitLab and purchased, or using GitHub and using using Git. Jacob, it appears that this is going to be RPM based, but it uses something called spec files to be able to generate things. This is all pretty new to me. I have not read deeply on this yet, but it sounds like they're using RPM after things are installed initially. So we will see how this goes, and yeah, it should be kind of interesting. Make a new tab. Okay, and so we are going to clone the GitHub, even though the other process is not completely done. Because that might take a little while as well. Okay, so that process has finished. And we're on to the next part. Yeah, this is I wouldn't expect anything less from Microsoft than to use something non-standard. I wouldn't expect anything less. It's just Microsoft being Microsoft for the sake of being Microsoft. All right. So now we need to change into CBL-Mariner and do git checkout 1.0 stable. You are in detached head state. Look around, make experimental changes, and commit them. Okay, we've done that part. Once downloaded and access the directory that has been created locally, the next thing to do is access a specific directory and generate the ISO there for startup. So we're going to say cd toolkit, and we're going to say sudo make ISO rebuild tools equals y. Package is equal no. Config file equals // image image configs full.json. And it's building. Well, it's downloading anyways. It's downloading. So we'll see how long this takes. See how long this takes. So, okay, so it says when this process is finished, you will have an ISO file available in the directory .out/images/full, and so we'll see what we've got when this finishes. So at least there are no error messages so far. Knock on wood. Lots of things saying no test files. Alright, well, this might not be the most exciting thing to watch right at the moment, but you're learning right along with me because this is something very new to me. I don't think I've compiled, for instance, the Linux kernel since like 2000. I think that's the last time I had to compile a Linux kernel. So but it appears to be downloading toolchain RPM. So it's downloading all these RPM files. And then apparently it's going to custom assemble them in an ISO image that you can use as an installer. We'll see how long it is before they relent and finally just make an ISO image available for people. I've got no problems with having to do this in the early stages of a project, but once once you get a project established, shouldn't have to. Ooh. My sister just sent me a picture of a hearse at a junkyard. On the side of it, it says, "We sell used body parts." That's hilarious. Well, maybe by the time this is done, my package from the Amazon will have been delivered, and I will have a way to mount my webcam so it doesn't have to be on top of my monitor. Open up a few different ideas for using that, and the mount was inexpensive. They should have an ISO available unless they have like a hardware check in the build process. Yeah, I agree. I doubt they're going to do a hardware check in the build process because they're meaning for this to be used on something like Azure. So I don't know. It'll be interesting as more people use this and start reporting about it and talking about, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of CBL-Mariner. I don't have any real expectations of this at the moment. But this is definitely more time consuming than just grabbing an ISO and running through an install. But hey, do something different. You learn something new, and learning is good. When you stop learning, you are in some ways you're having to accept the inevitability of death. You know, I try. I don't always succeed, but I try to learn something new every day, and that has served me well over the years. Adding RPM to worker chroot. Okay. I mean, Microsoft couldn't make anything uglier than the Windows 11 UI. You got a point. I mean, Windows 11 seems like it looks like a KDE Plasma knockoff to me, but and doesn't look as good as Plasma. There are so many ways that Microsoft could improve Windows, and it's not even funny. You know, I still feel like they shouldn't have bothered with a Windows 11 until they had completely migrated all of their items from control panel to settings. Because if you still got two areas to go in Windows 11 to do settings, then it's still just a jacked up piece of garbage as far as I'm concerned. I only keep a single Windows box, which I bought used, around because I have to support people using Windows. And rarely I will use it for some sort of demonstration on the YouTube channel, but that is about all the use it gets. And I don't have much of an intention of upgrading to Windows 11. Backend is semi-solid, but the UI looks like my Android and Mac OS had a baby. Yeah, and by baby, I'm assuming you're implying an illegitimate love child. It's got a face that only a mother could love, type of thing. Dark mode would be great, yes. The one good thing that I've seen from an early demo of Windows 11 is that they are promoting the Windows terminal to a first-class citizen, and so that will be in the quick access menu, where you right-click the start menu or do Windows X, and Windows Terminal is so much better than what they've had for the past 20 plus years. It's just not even funny. Plus the fact that you can launch old school command line cmd.exe. You can launch PowerShell, or you can launch Windows Subsystem for Linux from that terminal, and it's got a tabbed interface. Is a huge step forward for them, and hopefully they will continue down that road. So I'm guessing maybe I should have given this thing 4 processor cores, but oh well. It's probably going slower because I'm live streaming while it's downloading all this crap. All right. Well, I like WSL, but I don't use it because the Hyper-V requirement kills my ability to use VMware Workstation, so it's a no-go. Yeah, I have it installed on my lone Windows box here in my apartment. I've also got it installed on my work machine, and it doesn't seem to interfere with VirtualBox. So I know that doesn't help you using VMware Workstation, but it's I've been able to use VirtualBox and WSL at the same time and not have an issue. Yes, it absolutely would be better if they could make it native and not virtualized. I'm still a little bit in a state of disbelief that Microsoft has gone as far as they have with WSL, to the point where you can now run graphical Linux applications in Windows. It just seems unreal, considering, back in the Steve Ballmer days, Microsoft was saying, Linux is a cancer and it infects everything it touches, and they were just throwing money at the fight against Linux. And if they had pulled their collective heads out of their hind ends, they could have had this so much further than where it is now. So all right. It's still going, adding RPMs to the worker chroot, or chroot, however you want to pronounce that. I've heard it both ways. We'll go till 2:15, see where we're at. Oh, well, maybe we'll get this done. Done installing all packages, creating home downloads, CBL-Mariner build worker chroot.tar.gzip. So we'll see where this goes. I imagine this would go faster if I were not live streaming at the same time. With that being said, I am not likely to repeat this process when I'm not live streaming, because I'm just not that interested to see the time difference. So, initializing local RPM repository, initializing repository configurations. This does make me wonder how much space this is all taken up. Computer, file system, properties. Last access 12/31/69. Okay, well, obviously the date's not right. July 25th, 2021. And well, that's actually correct for where I'm at. QEMU. Huh. Interesting. Well, let's do a new tab. see how much. We're using. I imagine this process is going to take a bit of time. So I'll let this run until 1:30 Eastern time. So that would be 2 hours and 30 minutes. I don't think I don't think I can realistically go on past that, because sitting in the same spot for that amount of time is not going to do me any good today. If I don't get this to complete and generate an ISO by the time we wrap things up for today, I will likely make a follow-up video and touch on this. Hopefully by make a short video and talk about it to release on Tuesday, perhaps, and then maybe I will have a secondary video coming out later in the week, Thursday or Friday, that actually goes through the install process. If I sit here and do this today, it's going to take all afternoon, and I've got some other things I do need to get done. So this likely will not finish by the time we have to wrap it up. And even going until 1:30, this is going to be the longest live stream I've done. So we will see. We will see what happens. Let's see. I'm still shocked Microsoft Linux is a thing. My first thought was, well, on to FreeSB before Microsoft breaks it completely. Yes, thankfully we've got choices, and I have a hard time believing Microsoft is going to be able to take over Linux. I think there will always be holdouts that will want something more pure than anything Microsoft will produce. But I might be one of the holdouts, and I don't know. Even something about just doing this process to generate the ISO for Microsoft Linux makes me feel a little dirty. But I don't know. Like I've said in previous live streams, I came up not so much using DOS and Windows, but the home computers of the 80s and early 90s. So I started off my first computer that I bought with a Tandy Color Computer 3. I had a couple of Amigas in the 90s. Stuck around on that platform even after Commodore went belly up, because the alternative was Windows 95, which sure, they had nicer looking games after a while, but they crashed more, and Microsoft didn't have true preemptive multitasking until on the desktop in widespread use until Windows XP. Yes, I know there was Windows 2000. I did have that installed for, I don't know, 18 months on a machine when I was going to school. But as soon as I got past the requirements that mandated I use something like Visual Studio, which was only on Windows at the time, I canned Windows. And so from like 2005, well, let's see, from 2000 until 2004, I ran Linux as my primary machine. 2004 to 2005, sometime in 2005, I did have a Windows machine dual booting with Linux. After that, until fall of 2008, I just had Linux. And then my ex-fiance got me a used Mac just to play around with. Let's see. Also in 2008, I purchased a Dell XPS laptop, which lasted for 18 months before it went on the charger one night. And the next morning it wouldn't turn on again. And so that happened, I think, about October of 2009. So by March of 2010, I bought my first MacBook Pro. And I've had Macs and Linux ever since. I do still keep one Windows box around because I provide support to people that do use Windows. And it's nice to be able to have a machine to test on, but that's basically all it gets used for, is for testing. I don't do any real work on it. It doesn't have any real data on it. And likely when I hopefully yet this summer get to redoing my network, it's going to go on its own VLAN, and then it will be isolated on its own little island, and access to it will be through zero tier, and that way if I don't want a particular machine to have access to it, I turn off that zero tier network and Windows can sit in its own island and go insane like Tom Hanks in Castaway. So that's kind of where I'm at. I still run Windows 2000 for some legacy applications and DOS games. Nice. I've still got my Windows 2000 CD. I don't think I've tried to install it lately, though. Yes, you nailed it, Catherine. Wilson! Oh, that was a fun movie, if a little on the long side. Oh, says it's cleaning up directories, so maybe it's getting closer to finishing. We might just have this done by 1:30. Got 10 minutes to go. 10 minutes to go. Preparing ISO's bootloaders. Okay. Well, what do you know? See what we've got here. Look at that. We've got an ISO image. Okay. Let's do this. Let's see, root at 216.74 150. And copy that over to Proxmox VE. Just for the sake of argument, the ISO image is 677 megabytes. Okay. So if we come over here and we want to, how do we want to do this? We want, okay, let me try this again. Let me see. Okay, let's find out what my local IP address is. And we are on 119. Okay, so let's copy this to local machine. Let's do it at temp at the local machine. So let's okay. Users, capital U users. Connection refused. Okay. So, right. FileZilla Pro. Open. Okay, more than one way to skin a cat. 172.16.7.4 150 root. Quick connect. Okay. And Make this work. We'll make this work. More than one way to skin a cat. It's insane watching Windows 2000 boot in a VM with NVMe back storage in under 2 seconds. The bootloader is one of the 2 seconds. Very nice. I like What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Johnny Depp, and Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes. Yep. And Winona Ryder, I believe. Is that Winona Ryder? Seems like that was Winona Ryder in that one too. Okay. 1993. Oh, Juliette Lewis. I stand corrected. Juliette Lewis. Yeah. Okay. Now. We've got that on local. So we should be able to come here, upload, full 1.0, upload. That's the one tricky thing about Proxmox VE is you've got to have the ISO images in the database or else they won't show up in the web interface, and yeah, it's a hoop that you have to jump through, but I do like the system overall. And oh my, it's 128. So we'll keep going a little while. Keep going a little while. Hopefully they don't have something stupid put in this, like forcing you to use administrator as the root file name or something idiotic like that. Create VM. CBL-Mariner. Can't believe it needs more than 40 gigs. 2 CPU cores, 2 gigs of RAM, bridge 0. Let's see what she does. VM number 107. And you are seeing it here for the first time along with me. So let's see what it's going to do. So you boot to a root prompt. Well, let's see what it's supposed to do. It did not give me a prompt to select graphical installer. So I'm guessing maybe this is not a good ISO image, or not completely good. glibc 2.32 not found. Required by /live installer. Well, that's a bummer. Imagine Microsoft with a dependency error. Yeah, go figure. Oh my gosh. Yep. Well, so much for that. So much for that. The curse of the live demo strikes once again. I will put 99.9% of the blame on Microsoft. I will attempt this in VirtualBox at some point. I don't think that's going to make a difference, since it does appear to be a dependency issue. And I followed the instructions. So we shall see if more information comes out about that. I'll try to make an ISO on my dev machines. If it works and you want it, let me know where to send the link. Yeah, if you get it to work, hit me up on my on the let me see, on the YouTube channel. If I go to my channel, if you come over to the About tab, you can find my email address there, and then I can email you a Google Drive link if you've got a Gmail account, or otherwise I can give you access to Dropbox, which would work as well. I've still got a Dropbox account that I rarely use, so definitely Microsoft's fault. I guess called it on they broke Linux. Yeah. To err is human. To really screw things up, you have to be based out of Redmond, Washington. Or work at Microsoft. So, alright, well, thanks to everybody that stuck around and humored me through this process of attempting to build an ISO for CBL-Mariner, aka Microsoft Linux. Which, you know, it still sounds dirty to me to have to say that. To me, this is nothing but a toy at this point. And a broken toy at that. if other people have got it working. I haven't seen a live demo. I've seen some screenshots, but I have not seen a live demo. So I will be investigating a little further, and if it holds my interest at all, then I will see about doing a follow-up video. So let me take my screen off. I can jump back. Catherine, I may have missed your email. I went through a period there. I was getting just a boatload of email and having a difficult time keeping up with it for much of June. So I don't remember it off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean I didn't see it at the time it came through. Obviously I didn't get a reply out to you. But give me a second. I'm scrolling through and my email only goes back until the 19th of June. So if I did get it, I apologize for not sending a response. Like I said, I was getting bombarded with a lot of email throughout the month of June. Thankfully, I've got some things that I unsubscribed from and some projects that have concluded, so things are a little bit more under control now. But yeah, if you want to resend that to me or forward me a copy, I'll take a look at it. Yeah. So thanks everybody for sticking around and humoring me through trying to get this Microsoft Linux to work. I did not see the guy that sent me the OVA image in chat, and so hopefully he sees this live stream after the fact. Running through the build process now. Okay, cool, Jacob. I'm very interested to see what happens for you, and I don't think I missed a step, but hard telling. Live demos have that effect sometimes, I guess. So on that note, I'm going to once again thank everybody. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to like this very long live stream, 2 hours and 40 minutes. I may have to chop this up a little bit and release it in sections. I don't think anybody's really going to rewatch the whole of the live stream, so that might be something I'll be doing in the evenings this week. So stay tuned for more news. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. And if you're in a place that has some nice weather, get outside for a few minutes and away from your screen. It's something I'm going to try to do this afternoon myself. So I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.